Backrooms is directed by Kane Parsons and stars Chiwetel Ejiofor. I do apologize for butchering the name, his name, and Renade Rinsev. I'm sorry if I can't pronounce the names correctly, and among others. And in this story, it deals with a back room that's basically, if you've seen from the trailers, it's like in these liminal spaces, as they call it, where it's in the back of a department store in which Clark has to investigate what's going on inside his store while uncovering a mystery behind this outer dimension where you got everything that's all like these very yellow, like green looking walls and everything. And along the way, he's also having to deal with his personal life, going to his therapist that's played by Renate. And as the movie unfolds, you start to see some weird things that have become unnerving, as not only is the movie kind of like following a found footage type of format, but also a traditional movie format as well. And this is also based on a series of shorts that were also on YouTube from the same director. Now, here's some backstory. Now, going into the trailers for this, I can admit that this was one that I found myself interested in, but I didn't really know much about it. And then I ended up finding out that this was apparently based on a series of videos of short films that were on YouTube for a while, that were directed by the same guy, Kane Parsons. And I actually did get a chance to start watching some of them after I watched the film. And if you do end up watching the actual short films, they end up explaining like more of the lore about what's going on. But going into the film itself, just from the trailers, I just kind of thought it was going to be like one of those movies, kind of like on the realms of like Stanley Kubrick, David Lynch type of movie. And it also kind of was making me think of that other one that came out some years ago called Vivarium, and the whole liminal spaces, as they call it. But after upon hearing much of the buzz surrounding the film, and especially all the other phenomena that this was based off of, because even back in like I think 2018 or 2019 when it first got word around, it started out with just a picture that was on like a Reddit post or something, and it became pretty much was known as a creepypasta. And other than Slender Man, this is now probably the second film that I think that they've adapted into a creepypasta. And going into a movie like this, it had me really wondering like what it was going to do, especially with the whole like gimmick of the trailer, how it goes from like level to level with the floor going down and down further, where everything's pretty much like becoming remnants. And so after upon seeing the movie, I can say that Backrooms was certainly one that I definitely dug the hype for it. This has been quite a crazy year for movies, where I'm really glad to see the independent movies. This is twice now in a row that I've seen a great film to not only push the edge with a lot of unnerving stuff like Obsession did, but this is also the second time we've seen a first-time indie director pretty much go full mainstream into bringing and go into wild recognition, because this movie is not only killing at the box office, but from the guy that directed this, the dude's only 20 years old, and it's just so insane how, he made a movie that not only had some some talent behind it, but and especially some of the producers involved, but was able to take something that was just off of YouTube and turn it into something really full length. It really shows a lot of the passion that I think that more future filmmakers will have. It seems like now we're living in the YouTube era days, where you can take a YouTube video, or a director or a person that would be making videos on YouTube and then blowing up into Hollywood, or doing their own kind of thing in mainstream media, and so or making their own feature length. And I think that's a really great way of showcasing of the talent that will go. And I really hope that Kane Parsons goes a long way, because this movie was phenomenal in so many ways. Where do I start? So to get my pros out of the way, I thought the cast in this were great. Chiwetel, I'm sorry if I can't pronounce his name, but he did a phenomenal job in this. Now, I've really loved the guy in a lot of other things that he's seen in. In this one, you really get the sense of like where he's really on the path of figuring out everything that's happening, and you also learn more about his history, about his alcoholism and everything, and his divorce is going on with his wife. And the guy really goes for it in a lot of scenes, especially the scenes that involve with him and his therapist. And the guy, like, the performance in this is not only very strong, but I'm not going to go into spoilers, but it also takes quite a turn later on in the film, the third act. And like, man, I don't really know if he'll get nominated for Best Actor or anything, but he really nails it and it's so great in this. And so the same thing with the girl. I think she really does her best as well. And she kind of comes really more later on in the story because at the beginning she's kind of more in and out. And she really comes into more play in the third act. But I thought she still did good. But it does leave some like more questionable things that are kind of to be desired as far as the writing for her character, because the movie does have some like limited character arcs as far as her character as it plays along. And then the biggest things I have to really acknowledge the most is the production design. Not only did this film really look like it was kind of going for like a 70s look type of vibe, but it also makes me really think that they really did their homework on how they pieced together a film that would have probably took place in the 90s, with it being kind of half footage in some parts where you got scenes that are a person going through using just handheld cameras and everything, walking around. And in a way, this is pretty much like something that probably would have been done if we probably would have had like if it would have came out in the 90s. I think this is something that probably Stanley Kubrick probably would have done back then. You know, because it uses very similar lighting, it uses similar location settings and everything that's very reminiscent of The Shining in a lot of parts. And there's even elements of David Lynch in here, especially when we get to a scene that, not going to go into spoilers, but it was making me think real big time of Twin Peaks. And also, there's also familiarity with this one that I shit you not, is pretty much the closest that we get to doing a live action Half-Life or Portal film. And if they do get a chance to get Kane Parsons to do a Half-Life movie, or based on the popular video game series, or even a Portal movie, I'd be so down, because this really not only fills the vibe of like the movie goes in so many different ways of showing you how this whole area in all the back rooms is like a maze, and it goes on, and it changes up everything too. And there's even some other stuff that really catches me off guard. Like I'm not going to spoil anything, but let's just say that there's stuff that has to do with like backwards signs and stuff like that. That's also reminded me of David Lynch as well, with the whole like kind of outer world, so to speak, kind of vibe, or surrealist type of world that they set up. And also, not to mention the tension that really builds too, especially in the beginning when things unfold, and then later on when we get to see a lot more as Clark is going through, like in seeing all the different things that come into play when he gets his crew to go with him. Not only was it getting me on the edge of my seat, but there's some really disturbing stuff later on where, you know, this is the kind of world that is more in of itself like a mirror type of place of the real world. And I'll leave it there because I can't really go into spoilers for anything, because this leaves a lot of stuff that you have to really check out for yourself to watch. But it definitely goes for it in that very unsettling type of vibe. And when it gets to the third act, not only was I really like, you know, wondering like how far I was going to go, but just more and more layers that keep piling on. Like, I was just really surprised that a movie like this was able to get made with how much work they put into not only good practical effects, but also a really ominous score that plays that was giving me very haunting vibes of something that's a cross between scores that you would hear in like The Shining, but also that a mixture of like that creepy lo-fi type of music that you hear on YouTube. Because funny enough, there was actually music that I was listening to a while back that was kind of like, I think it was called like In an Empty Store or something like that. It goes for that kind of music, but in a very, very, very eerie mood. And so, in addition, there's also some parts in here that was actually making me laugh at times when you get some of the interactions that happen with the characters, and just like some unexpected kind of moments that happen that I was actually laughing in the theater on. Not in the unintentional way, but just in some of the things they throw in there, like before we get into the actual before we get into the back rooms. More I can go into detail, but this is certainly everything I wanted to see out of. And if I'm going to have just like any kind of minor cons, I will have to say that there's like just some minor things like about the main girl in this. Other than like a couple flashbacks we get through, we don't really get to know much really like. She doesn't really get much of a character arc in this, and it really seems like the movie kind of shifts gears as it gets into the third act, so to speak. And so I wish that we could have maybe fleshed some things out more with her character, because we really get to because you're really more involved with like Clark's journey throughout the film as you are with really doing as it spins for a majority of the time. But that's just really all my minor things. And there's also some questions that I did kind of really asking myself, but now that I've also been watching more of the shorts that they appear on YouTube on, I think that I'm really getting more of the gist of what they were really going for in this story, in this world that they've set up for it. And you know what? if they actually do end up doing a sequel to this, or even doing like a kind of a TV series or something that's very reminiscent of like an anthology format, I'd really like to see how this goes, because I do love this world they have set up for it. And so I really hope Kane Parsons gets the chance to really do more mainstream, gets to go really more mainstream in the future, and he can go places. And so with that, I had such a great time with this one, and this is going to be on one of my best of the year, and I'm going to give this a phenomenal grade on the Film Freaks meter. So for those of you who have also seen Backrooms, and also let me know in the comments about the shorts as well. And I've also heard that there's also some of the video games based off of it. Let me know in the comments what you thought about it, and thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in my next review. I'll see you later.